journalize their stories and what poverty did to them and why they needed an excellent teacher, an excellent school, an excellent system. And I think he's always led from there. Second, he's got unwavering belief in people. Sometimes he sees potential in them before they know that they have any potential at all. He's a person of great determination, and I have a more fun story on this one. So much determination that there was a phase where he used to travel to Bombay every week from Pune, so that was a 3 to 4 hour journey, which he would leave at like 6 in the morning. And he was willing to wake up at 4 in the morning and work out for an hour with a group of us who he convinced to work out with him and then travel. So that was his determination and how contagious it was. His excellence is par excellence. So when I worked with him, I remember if we had to conduct sessions for our fellows, he'd make us envision it, script it, reverse it, and repeat that until it was near perfect, because not a minute of our fellows should get wasted, and everything we do for them in those 45 minutes should get into a classroom. So that was Sandeep's excellence. I think his orientation to challenge has been one that I've tried to learn from. He's always said, we struggle because our children don't have an option but to struggle in many of the situations they're thrown into, and so the least we can do sometimes, I guess, is just show up and try to make our way out of that challenge, our own challenge for them. And I think so many legacy things built in the network. I think about the day he wrote a concept note that today is I teach. He realized that our secondary students in Pune don't have anywhere to go to after grade 7, and a one-pager then has now turned into more than countless schools. I think he thought about how our alumni just need support when they finish the fellowship. So many of the programs that exist today, including Innovate Ed, were like early brainchilds of Sandeep. And so when I think about Sandeep staying the course, I think about all of these anchors, his students, his ability to see potential in all of us, his determination, just unwaveringly anchoring himself with excellence, orientation to challenge, but really just an unmatchable vision for how education can change. And so Sandeep, excited for you to bring that to life. Thank you.
Very, very kind. So sorry.
I was like, guys,
I'm so sorry. Just put it. Yeah. I was not expecting that. That was very kind of you. And I did not mean to slap you in return. Shweta told me she'd be introducing me, and I thought she'd be like, hey, like, here's somebody that grew up in the U.S. And, and that was not what I was thinking. So thank you. Very touching. Folks, like, excited to be here with all of you. Excited to hold space over the next hour and a half. We're going to be going a little deep over the next hour and a half, and we're going to try to get real a little fast. Before we do, though, what I'd love to do is just turn it over to you, and with the person next to you, just hold space on one quick question, right? Which is like, I don't know, like, why are you here? Like, what made you actually come to this workshop? And I'm genuinely curious to know a little bit more. Like, what actually made you to take 2 feet? Many incredible things happening today, but what made you curious to come here right now at 3:10 on a Sunday afternoon? With the person next to you. Go. Sorry, did I hurt you?
No.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Yeah. We don't have a clicker, right? Okay. Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. I'll just give you a second. You what?
I might not be outside.
You might be outside. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Just during the small group time is when I'll really kind of need you to be here. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay, let's come back. Let's come back. Thank you all. Let's come back. Let's come back. Yeah. Curious to know like what has you here. If we could just get a few people to share out like what's made you come. Yeah.
So I think in this field there's a lot to do,
Yeah.
and there's a lot you want to do as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes you take a path and then you see there's a divergence, and then you want to do both of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to focus and take this path you chose at the beginning and not. And that's why I'm here. I think I want to do a lot of things, but I kind of find it hard to just pick one and then stay on that.
Yeah. Let's snap if you resonate with that. Yeah. What are others? Like, what are other potential? Why are people here? Yeah.
I can see the goal that I want to reach.
Yeah.
But then, how do I balance between that particular goal versus the day-to-day nitty-gritties or details and things that are happening that might seem as an obstacle, to achieving that goal. So how do I then balance and look at still the bigger picture and be, travel towards that?
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Right now, I am pursuing a master's in social work, and in my field work, I see a different India. Like, I see slums where you must be doing the situation. So, I want to see what's your perspective on what is India.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Teaching India was my first job ever, and so a lot of my 20s have been shaped by what could be over here. And as I'm kind of getting ready for the next decade of my life, a lot of questions about securities overall are on my mind. And, so a lot of existential questions, a lot of them are work-related, identity-related.
Yeah. Let's snap if you've been there as well. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. So, folks, there are two paths that this could go, right? Like, path one is I could stand here and I could preach to you and I could spend much of the next 90 minutes telling you about like why you should stay the path and like how like I've modeled that. Or path two could actually be that we try to just really get real together fast. And we're going to try to take path two, which means that we're going to try to go a little deep over the next 90 minutes, And so as you enter, whatever you need to do to be fully present, to be able to basically, like it's a lot, I came in here feeling all chaotic because there's a lot of good stuff happening, but whatever you need to do to be able to basically be present, please do that. If you need to basically take 30 seconds, like just breathe a little bit. If you need to close your eyes for a minute, if you want to jot stuff down, but we're going to try just to be present because we're about to basically go a little bit deep on this journey together and try to hold some questions to look inward, right? And my hope at the end of this is that I leave you with some questions that you can then take to be able to basically continue utilizing more and more when I see the two paths, when I think about the direction that I am heading, Okay. So here's some questions that we're actually going to explore today. So one is, what are the triggers that really make me question whether or not I want to stay the path? And what are the things that actually make me realize that I have a fork in the road, I need to choose? And what does the research actually say about people who often leave their jobs? But also just as compellingly, what does the research say about people who stay in their jobs, right? And does questioning my path make me a bad person? Does it mean that actually I'm less focused? And what do I do with that, right? And how do I actually deal with feelings of guilt that come up whenever I start to question the path? And what can I really do? What can I actually do to try to basically work through those? And what does it mean to be able to hold those triggers as I start to stay the path? I would love to tell you that oh my God, my journey has been one where it's been a smooth sailing path and I've never thought about leaving and I've actually been like fully committed and on this journey 100% of the time, but it's just not the truth, right? If you were to look a little bit at my journey, look at a little something like this, right? This giant zigzag line that's filled with a lot of moments, right? And so one is like, when I first basically started this work, it was filled with, well, should I do the work and make the jump, right? And to me, that felt super exciting at the time. And so I was on a big high when I started doing this work 18 years ago, right? But then after that, right, I did my first month of teaching, and that went really well. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, and this is giving me a lot of purpose, and it gave me a lot of identity, and that also had me on a big high. And then I did my first year of teaching, and I was like, why the hell did I do this, right? And that got me to a very big low. And then I had this end of fellowship, argued with my parents, right? And they were like, you said you were going to do this for 2 years, and you were going to go back to this, and now it's actually time to start this thing you call life. And that made me feel incredibly low as well. And then basically moved to India, tried to basically play a role in getting our institute off the ground, saw basically that come together, and I was like, guy, like this feels real, this feels great. And then my brother kind of comes in with a provocative question, which he has a tendency to do, and he's like, well, why have you convinced yourself that impact and financial security are mutually exclusive things? And I was like, crap. And then I got promoted, that was a big low. And then I met up with friends from Teach for America, right? Many of them were doing things at Amazon and McKinsey and all these places where they were making many multiples of what I was. And I was like, crap, that was a big low. Got embroiled in a couple of crises over time, right? Doing this work, right? Took a trip with my family, and my brother flew business, and I was in economy 7 rows back, and I was like, man, what am I doing? Launched a book, that felt great. That was a high, right? Saw fellows graduate, that was a high. Started to see impact at the end of the year and what actually happened with kids, and that felt like a high. Launched a circle, that felt like a high. Met peers again, right? They're moving fast with their lives, that felt like a low. This has been a more realistic depiction of my journey, right? And that's been one that's been filled with ups and downs and choices and forks in the road probably more often than like you would think. It hasn't been like, oh my God, there's this moment that happens every now and then. It's been a series of a lot of moments that made me have to choose a lot. We're going to try to do some of this work ourselves, yeah? And so we're going to basically just abide by 4 big norms today. One is like what stays in here and what gets shared in here stays in here, yeah? So keep this super confidential, yeah? Because that's actually what's going to help us to be able to create the container to do this work, yeah? Second is like, I can't like force you to do the work over the next 90 minutes, right? That's not what I'm able to do. I can try to give you sparks and then get you to do with them what you will. What I can also tell you is that if you choose to lean into those sparks and do something with them, you will leave here with more than if you do not. Yeah? And so the invitation is to be brave. Yeah? The invitation is to basically, I see myself, I want to open that door, maybe I don't, to open the door for a little bit and to hold it. And if I'm basically hearing that door opened and that bravery opened, to be able to basically hold that without judging. Yeah? And then finally, we're going to hold 3 big lenses today, right? We're going to be thinking me, we're going to be impact, we're going to be thinking long term, right? So we're not going to leave here with like quick solutions you're going to address in the next 30 minutes, right? We're going to try to basically go to some of the roots. Okay, so we're going to basically start this exercise of a little bit of journey mapping, right? And I'm going to hand this over to you in just a second, yeah? Before I do, go back, please. Before I do, I'm going to introduce a very good friend of mine that's basically in India for a couple of days. One of the most incredible teachers I've ever met, somebody whose video I've probably watched many, many times because he was filmed as such an incredible teacher, but also probably one of like the purest human beings I think I know, and that is Mr. Delhagen sitting right here. He's going to model a little bit of what this journey's been like for him.
2 times. Hello. I'm feeling the feels, as we say sometimes. Feeling the feels, being back here, seeing so many familiar faces, smiles. And part of that, and why I'm feeling that way, is going to come up in how I kind of map some of this journey here for you. But just like a quick little, my name is Taylor Delhagen, and part of what I'm going to explain and model maybe a little bit has to do with how I map my journey here. Oh my golly Moses, look at that, big time. Okay. And I like to talk about my journey in terms of this word we say, Chautauqua. Can everyone say Chautauqua? Chautauqua. Very nice. Chautauqua is actually the name of a lake in upstate New York where I grew up for some part of my life. And actually, it's an Iroquois Nation term, and it translates to moccasin. Okay? And it's shaped like a moccasin, but it's come to mean how we take journeys, how we learn, how we evolve, how we iterate. And what I have up here, and in the next couple of slides, you're going to see just a bunch of people. And not just people to me, but these are the people that sustain me in this work. So one of these people, this is my father right here. And part of that, and why I'm showing him, and he's pretty prominent here. Also, side note, look at this dress right here my mom is wearing. That is awesome. That is 1980s at its peak. But I'm showing my dad here. My dad was definitely one of the people who inspired me and grounded me in why I do the work that I do today. He set that North Star. Sometimes we call it a North Star, like how I am guided and what I want to be true in this work. He was very involved in the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and kind of that narrative, that work, was just very much alive in both my older brother and my younger sister and in me. So that's my family, and when I think about my journey mapping, I think about my family, that first core group that has inspired me, and I think about them right here as I move through my day-to-day. If we move to the next slide, more people, this is my wife, and me, but my wife. And what I'm going to encourage you to do as you think about your map, not think about my wife, that's weird, but I would love for you to think about who are your people. I found my person when I was 17. I walked into the dining hall of the college, the university that I had just gone to on my very first day. And I said, "You come here often?" And she looked at me, she said, "This is the dining hall. I come here 3 times a day." And then she walked away. I was so in love. And and we started teaching together. 4 years later, we moved to New York with a program called Teach for America. I don't know if you've heard of it. And we moved to New York and started teaching. We thought we were going to be there for 2 years. And then we were going to go on to law school or something else. And on that very first day, we both came home, back to our apartment, and we said, "This is what we are going to do." And I just remember that moment at 182 Prospect Park West, that little tiny apartment that we lived in, when we just knew that this was going to be the thing that we were going to do. Now, if Tiffany, my wife, and I had not been together at that point, we probably wouldn't still be in this work. She is also an educator. She is a badass educator. She is now the director for curriculum and instruction for the city that I get to live in. She is an inspiration to me, and we talk about work. We talk about work all the time. Some folks like to talk about how there is a separation between my personal and my professional. And I'm like, cool, I'm so glad that works for you. That does not work for me. I want a role. I want a job. I want to be in work that is married together. I got goosebumps. Ooh, I love it. I want the people that I work with to know intimately who my family is, and I want my family to know intimately about what it is that I do. I have 2 boys. They're going to be on the next slide here, I think. Oh, there they are. I love them. Okay, all right, I'm that dad. But I want them to know what it is that my wife and I do. So this is Rumi, he is 9, and this is Rivers, he's there for the snacks, he is 4. And when they go to school, I want them talking to their friends about why Tiffany, my wife, and I do the work that we do. Not that I don't want them to brag about us. There's nothing to brag about. What I want them to do is to know that this work towards equity, that this is important. Just like my dad did for me, I want that to be true for them. And the next slide here, and this is where I'll wrap. I think about my trajectory in this work. So we moved to New York in 2006. I teach for a couple of years in my placement school. And then after 3 years of teaching, you know everything about teaching, they let you open up a school. Please hear the sarcasm in my voice. I knew nothing at all. And what did work for me, though, was that on those teams that I got to be a part of, I had the privilege of being a part of, I was surrounded by a group of people who challenged me at every single corner. And with that challenge, there was a hell of a lot of love. So I taught for 7 years at a school called Achievement First Brooklyn High School in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. And had just the most fabulous time learning how to teach, learning why I teach. There were long nights where after school, we'd go to the pub and we would sit with a text and we would actually dig into the text just like we would want our students to dig into it. We were so nerdy. It was so great, and the instruction was so fire. It was wonderful. After that, I helped start another school, actually after being in India, because Sandeep changed my life. After being in India I lived here for about a year and a half, went back and did feel like I'd had this moment of, oh, friends here were not afraid to ask some really hard questions. And I realized that back in New York, I was in a little bit of a bubble, and friends were not challenging in the ways that I thought they had been. And so kind of getting out of that context, I think, was another really, really important part of my learning journey. And so I would encourage you to think about how you're doing that. And the last thing that I'm just going to leave you with here too, and you kind of mentioned this as well, is like seeing your students graduate, seeing them take the next room. I had this incredible experience. So I'm showing a couple of students up here. So I taught them when they were in 10th grade, and then taught them when they were 11th grade, so for a couple of years. Then they graduated, and then when I was a professor at the Relay Graduate School of Education, I got to teach them again as graduate students, getting their master's degrees. And then I saw them take the old job that I had at the school. So they've kind of been through this incredible relay of I'm like, wow, that is leadership. That is what I'm talking about. And so when I do start to feel low in this work, if I have that graph back up, I do think about them quite frequently. They have pictures in our home, and they are a good reminder for me of why I do this work. So again, I hope the theme here is people, and you have this incredible network of folks that you're sitting next to, that you have in your life. Use them. Use them in that way, lean on them, and don't be afraid to lean on them either. Okay? Thank you. Thanks for that space.
Thank you for that, Taylor. That was beautiful. Okay, folks. We're going to hand this over to you now. Yeah? You're going to pair up with somebody. And we're going to actually give you a few questions to try to start to journey map this for yourself, right? You're going to have a handout in case you didn't bring anything. And the invitation is going to basically be to try to plot this for yourself. And as you plot this, some questions to maybe guide you, which you'll see on these handouts, right? Were, what have been the moments when you've been really clear about your conviction for doing this work, right? What have been the moments where actually, wow, this feels like I'm doing the right thing and that my why is as clear as it's ever been? What have been the moments when you've actually thought about leaving? Yeah, when you've been at the fork in the road, you said, I don't know what to do next. What have been the moments of pride? Yeah. And what have been the triggers that have been driving the moments of doubt? When I've actually thought about leaving, what have been the actual triggers that have created that? Yeah. And what do you think were the reasons underlying this? Yeah? You're going to have about 20 minutes. My advice is to take about 5 minutes on your own and then to start sharing. And if it's not fully formed, that's okay, right? But with the person next to you, you're going to hold space. Can anybody remind us what the 4 norms were before we actually jump in? What the first one was? We're going to keep this as a confidential space. What was the second one? That's the invitation, right? I can't force you to do the work, but I can tell you I deeply believe if you do, you'll walk out with more than if you don't. Yeah? The third one was? As I'm hearing people be brave, right? How do I just suspend judgment, right? So we're going to hold on to those 3 right now. We'll bring the 4th one a little bit later. Take 5 minutes on your own, and then when you're ready, you're just going to turn to the person next to you in about 5 minutes, and you're going to start to share and give each other about 6 or 7 minutes to be able to hold space. Yeah? Okay, go. To the person next to you, if you're not fully done, that's okay. But you'll try to just basically start to reflect aloud a little bit now and let it be a little unformed, yeah? So we're going to hold space with a partner, and then we're going to move forward in about 12 to 15 minutes. Okay, go. Kinesthetic right now, yeah? So we're going to try to basically, I'm going to throw out some statements to you, and I'm going to ask you to do is, if you really agree with this statement, you think actually this is something that's resonated, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. And if you don't, just leave your hands down, yeah? So frustration with how much I get paid has made me question my commitment to staying the path. I agree with this statement at any point in my career. I'm going to raise this hand. Thank you. Put your hands down. Just look around. Getting proximate to communities has reminded me why I am here at times. Just take a look around. Yeah. I have at times felt like I'm not having the impact that I am capable of. I felt I resonate with this thing at any time. Okay. I found myself celebrated for the work that I do. Whatever you want to define that as. Yeah. I found this work to sometimes be lonely. Seeing the career growth of my peers, has made me question my journey. Seeing the career growth of my peers has made me question this journey. Okay. And I have felt privileged to do this work when I see what my peers are doing. Yeah. Maybe I felt both of those at different times, right? And I have sometimes found it hard to remember why I joined this work in the first place. You resonate with that? Okay. So here's a little bit of the research says. Yeah, I'm going to give you just a few minutes of the research, and then we're going to get you back into small groups one more time. But there actually has been a decent amount of research about why people don't stay the path, right? Some of that research has actually been done just in companies more generally. Why do people leave jobs? Why do people stay in jobs? Some of it's also been done in the nonprofit sector and work that's been at the intersection of equity. So I'm going to give you a couple of just key headlines, right? So these are some of them, right? Lack of career advancement, right? 63% of people that basically leave end up citing this as a big one, right? Lack of adequate compensation, again, about 2/3 of people cite that as a big one, right? Feeling disrespected at work, right? Like I don't actually feel like I'm respected for basically what I bring and for what I do, but also not finding meaning at work, right? And this is a number that has actually gone up over the past decade or so, right? So not finding meaning at work has something that's actually gone up quite a lot, right? I'm not sure why I'm here, I'm not sure what I'm doing. And then there's also been some work in equity and nonprofits that also point to this a little bit as well, right? So again, lack of career advancement, when you just zero in on organizations that are nonprofits, has come as a big one. Compensation has come as a big one in nonprofits and work with equity. Also purpose, right? And I think what's often come up is, I started this work doing something, but I'm losing my sense of purpose. And that's very closely connected to, I'm not really sure if I'm having the impact actually that I think I want to have, right? And if I start to question that impact for a while, then I start to actually go back to, well, why I joined this work to be able to have impact, and I'm not having impact. And then peers, right? And this has actually kind of been taken a step further to say, well, what are some of the milestones that actually trigger jumps, right? And so there's actually been a decent amount of research on some of the key milestones that actually cause people to start to reflect and think about, right? Right? And, to the forks in the road, or basically, which path do I take, or identity, right? Actually, well, birthdays, right? Like, birthdays are key, right? Like, birthdays are ones that basically get people to question, and I can relate to this, right? Like, wow, I'm turning 30, I'm turning 40, like, these are birthdays, these are moments where it's like, wow, like, maybe I should be questioned, right? Peer reunions are actually a big one, right? I go back, I see people, and we start talking, and people start talking about how great their lives are, and those actually make people start to question, right? Work anniversaries as well, right? Moments of like insight where like, okay, I'm hitting this number now, like, should I continue to be doing this, right? And then other big life things, right? But there are moments that are more predictable that start to get people to actually reflect and to question, right? So what causes people to stay? Well, kind of intuitive, it's the flip of many of those things, right? 85% of people actually say that they're more likely to stay when they work with teams who are interested in their development, right? Like, that's a big one, right? I want to feel like I'm a part of a community that's invested in me growing and learning. 93% of people actually think they're more likely to stay with the workplace if the culture positively resonates with them, right? Like, it actually means a lot to people to say, I feel like the culture of this is one that actually makes me want to show up. We spend the vast majority of our waking hours in the workplace, right? Like that needs to be a place that makes me come to life, right? 60% of people say that fair is essential to their decision to actually stay in a job, right? And actually needs to be a level of compensation that is there. And then the interesting thing is that actually if you look at how tenure is broken down to age, it does go up, right? Right? How long people actually stay in a role does actually go up over time. A part of that maybe you could attribute to wisdom, part of it, like I'm making better choices with the roles that I'm in, I'm getting better at an understanding of like the type of role I want to be in, the type of work environment I want. And also I start to get a little bit less restless, right? And I start to actually get a little bit more secure and confident with myself and the decisions that I'm making, right? I'm gonna get you back off into small groups one more time, right? Except this time we're gonna basically hold space for a couple of questions. I've surfaced some triggers, right? I've surfaced the moments that make me feel deep moments of conviction. I've also surfaced some of the big moments that have actually made me doubt. And we saw some of that with the residents around hands that were raised across the room. The question is, well, I know that those triggers exist, what the heck do I do with them? Right? So we're gonna try to basically do this. Well, when I think about some of the triggers that have actually really caused me to question, well, what have I learned about that? Like, what is that telling me? Right? If a peer reunion caused me to question, what is that telling me about like what I'm thinking? What's the chatter going on in my head? Right? When I basically went and hung out with friends that did the fellowship, well, what that was telling me was that actually like, wait a minute, there's this part of me that I don't really want to acknowledge very often that actually cares about that stuff. And I want to think I'm bigger than that, right? But there's also this chatter in my head that's like, man, you should be moving faster. Sorry, can you just back up? Yeah, no. Just one question. Okay, just pause here. And so what is this also telling me that I really need, right? Like, if I think about what that chatter is, like, what is it, what's the need that's there, right? Like, is it that I need to be celebrated? Is it that I actually need to feel confident? Is it that I actually need to feel secure about this, even with respect to my peers, right? And when I boil it down to it, right, well, what are all of the noises that are around me, right? So when I flew, and that was a true story by the way, I basically flew with my brother a couple of years ago actually, right? Like I stepped back after that and I was like, do I really want to be flying business class? I was like, actually I really don't care. You know? But it was just like the disparity was just right in my face, you know? He's like getting champagne in business and I'm eating peanuts in economy. It was just staring me at the face and I was like, actually I really don't care, you know? And it made me actually realize that what I need are essential things to basically make me feel like I'm comfortable, right? But I don't need all the other stuff. And for me to separate that, to get clearer about it, is really important for me to separate what is logical versus the noise, you know? And so to be able to work through this, and be able to separate the noise from what is actually essential, well, what do I need to put into place? What do I need to ask for someone? Maybe it's a buddy to basically help me like really say like, hey, like remember what you actually need. Or maybe it's actually like reflection each day on some of this stuff, right? And then finally, well, what's really caused me to stay here in the first place? You know, because there's been a lot of people in this room have been seeing the path. And actually like, what are the factors, right? For me, that's been seeing impact. That's actually been getting really close to communities, right? That's been like spending time with kids. Like those have been things that have reminded me over and over again that like, wait a minute, like there is something larger than all of those noises. Yeah. We're gonna get off into small groups. You're gonna have 20 minutes, that same exact pairing, right? You're gonna hold space. You don't need to get through all of them. These are guided. Maybe pick 2 or 3 that you wanna go a little bit deeper in, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna try to steer this thing to a close before we bring this day to a close, yeah? Okay. Let's start to come back together.
Dr. King said, like, you know,
let's come back together.
Still plan. Yeah. And straight.
Let's come back. Let's come back. Okay, amazing.
I'm also into a big bite.
You look over at the person next to you and thank them for holding space for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as we start to steer this to a little bit of a close, I want to just go back to that norm, and you don't have to share this out, but when I think just to myself, where was I on the bravery spectrum today? Right? 5, I was like I really actually showed up. And one, like, I don't know, something's actually not having me acknowledge some of this. Where was I on the bravery spectrum? You don't have to share that with anybody else, but I just want you to hold that for a second. Yeah? Okay. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes of reflection time, then we're gonna do one round of large group sharing, and we're gonna bring this to a close, yeah? So, here's the question I want you to actually hold to yourself, right? Like, what would be possible if I really did stay this path for the next 25 years? Right? If I stayed focused in, and if I actually leaned in to why I joined this work in the first place, what would be possible? Who would I look in the mirror and find? And what could I be able to see around me potentially? Yeah? So I'm gonna ask you just to jot down to yourself for the next couple of minutes, what would be possible if I really did lean into this and stayed the path? Maybe hold space and just hear from folks a little bit, you know, like, what's a tool I'm leaving with? Maybe what's an insight I'm leaving with? What's a tool I could use to actually help me? Or what's just a big insight I had? We'd love to hear from anybody that, you know, is willing and open to share. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it's a tool per se, but I understood that I think about how other people tell me that I'm too young to know what I'm doing. But I also think about the fact that the past 20 years I've spent all my childhood listening to adults tell me that adulting is boring. And then I told them that I would not be a boring adult. So I think that's something that could help me stay the path, because if I survive 20 years of telling them that I'm going to prove them wrong, then why wouldn't I stay more?
Thanks for that. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
One tool I think I can use for the fellowship, at least that's what the path that I'm on right now. I have a lot of noises from the peers that I've worked in the previous, or I worked in a corporate, I came back to fellowship, or my parents, or my siblings. They have a lot of opinions, but one tool that I'm taking is talking more to my students. That's a very direct feedback that helps me keep on the path and come back to the school tomorrow, even after hearing a lot of conversation around. So that's one tool I'm going to very actively follow for the next 2 years to stay to the path of coming down.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Sorry, I think like what you shared about, you know, when you compare yourself to your peers, I think for me it's like knowing that what I feel I do is temporary and looking at the bigger picture. So like knowing nothing is that deep, you know. So I think looking at the bigger picture and knowing that what I feel now is temporary, I think will help me.
Yeah, thanks for that, Shakar.
So I think what would be possible if I be on the same path for the next 25 years would be happier me and happier kids. And the only tool that can help me stay on the path would be attachment with my kids. Like talking to them every day, sharing stuff, everything, like no matter what happens. They are my best friends and I'm their best friend.
So I think, I'm not a TFI fellow, but I work in the education space as well. I think over the course of the last 10 years that I've been doing this, if there's a message from a parent or something which is a great photo, a memory which I kind of remember, I make a note of it on my WhatsApp group and a group for myself, and I started. So whenever it's a not so great day, I just open that group, see those messages, and feel like, okay, this is the reason why I do these things. And that kind of helps me stay the path.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Also keep thinking how triggers are also in my own experience a lot more exaggeration faster in reality. If you over exaggerate your responses to situations and circumstances, thinking that tool I could keep going back to this working on myself to say, can I ground myself? Can the response to situations be actually equivalent to how bad they are and not more worse than they are?
So I never thought that milestones are kind of triggers. Like I was quite, it just blew my mind away because I think it's Tuki mentioned how she's reaching towards the milestones, same as me. So I'm thinking like, just preempting towards those milestones is something that I would like to do for the future, like knowing that it's coming up. So just preparing myself for it as well in some ways. That could be a potential trigger. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, and there's something beautiful about milestones too, you know. So like it shouldn't be that I like downplay the milestones as well, and just like my goal is to stay even keeled. But how do I also hold perspective? Yeah, yeah. Let's hear from one or two more, and we'll bring this to a close. Yeah.
The tool I'm going to use is that keep talking to like-minded people on a regular basis. So keep myself motivated. Be curious to know what they are doing and what I can do better.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. You else want to share? Yeah.
A tool I definitely take away is revisiting my relationship with triggers and holding on to the beauty of the awareness of the flip side of it. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thank you all for this. Yeah. I hope is that you're leaving here with a tool that you can use as you start to navigate, you know, what's such incredibly important work with, I don't know, incredibly important young people. Thank you all for also staying the path as long as you have and for doing this work. Yeah. We're going to close out with that. All right, everybody. Thank you, Sanjeev.